Hey, let's celebrate our student worship team. I'm short. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for being here tonight. LHPM, braving the weather and all of it. It's crazy out there. It's really cold and it's raining. So anyways, you guys came in soaked, so I'm very thankful that you made your parents drive here or made it here safely yourself. Really thankful that you guys are here. My name's Coleton. I'm the student pastor here, and we are in a series titled Practice the Way of Jesus. And if you've been here for any period of time, you know that last semester we talked about what the way of Jesus looked like and studied the letter to the church in Ephesus. And then this year we're really talking about three different things: what it looks like to be with Jesus, in order to become like Jesus, and then to practice and do the things that he did. And so the last 6 weeks, excluding last week, but for the first 5 weeks we dealt with what it looks like to spend time with him so that we become like him. And this next section that we're moving into is what it looks like to become like when we become more like him. Here are some of the things that we are able to practice in our lives. Here's some of the things we're able to practice. And so today, we're talking about practicing faith. Practicing faith. It's not necessarily, it is a way that you're actually with him, but this is something that's actually expressing the knowledge that you are with him. And so we're going to be talking about that today, practicing faith. This is the teaching text, which is really just a launching point for us, and we'll reference this from time to time. But Hebrews 11, I encourage you to read all of Hebrews 11. It's really beautiful. It's the faith chapter. It talks about faith in all of it. I just didn't have time to read all of it. But this is Hebrews 11, verse 1. It says, "Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." This is the word of the Lord. I've always been a bit of a daredevil. I like doing scary things, and it gives like bringing your heart rate up and like allowing it to like give you a rush, that kind of thing. And so when I was a kid, jumping off the second story of my house onto a trampoline and just flying down while my parents watched in fear or with joy. I didn't know what they wanted to happen, but flying down that way. I enjoyed that. I also I loved riding bikes and jumping bikes, and so I placed a board on my fence, like a 6-foot fence, a board, and then some bricks underneath it so that I could jump that, get a running, a start on my bike and jump that. And then I wanted it to be more intense, and so I added a landing ramp on the other side, so with a gap in between, and did that. And every now and then, like I'd hit the other side and fall down. I got a lot of scars on my stomach from that. But then to make it more intense, I added my sisters in between, and so I had to jump over them. And then I was told that I couldn't do that anymore because my parents were like, "We love them more than you." And I was like, "Okay, well, no." But I got in trouble for doing that. But I mean, like I've jumped off bridges into rivers. We went on the guys' camping trip, and if we had video of this, I would show you. But I jumped off this huge cliff. Me and Kyle did. With like a 3 or 4 second fall, man. It was like, whoosh, like it was such a long fall that my brain registered, "Hey man, we're still falling," and like landed in the thing. And Kyle did me the favor of like going down there and making sure like, "Hey, there's no rocks you're gonna land on and kill yourself." But I just love. I mean, like the rush of that. I just love it. It's so much fun being scared in that way. And I unfortunately have passed that on to my son, which isn't like the best thing in the whole world. But it has passed on to him, and he really loves doing things that are really high up. And so I have a picture of, this was on a road trip. There's Teddy. That's Teddy. That's my son. We just literally were driving by a Lowe's, and he sees this, and he's like, "I got to get up there." And I was like, "Of course you do, bro. That makes so much sense." But go to the next one and look at his face. I zoomed in on his face. It's so funny. I can't tell. He kind of smiles that way, so I can't tell if he's excited or he's like, "What did I do?" But anyway, so we get to this point, and that's where he's at, but that's how high it is. And the way he was able to get up was kind of like a stair-stepping thing, and then go back to the last slide. Yeah. He over here are like some stair-stepping things that got him up, and then he wanted to come down to this one because he had to touch them all. And then he couldn't get back over to get down. And so I was like, "Bro, you got to jump, man. Like, you're going to have to jump to me." And so go to the slide there that gives the length and stuff. It's only about 13 feet. Okay, so it's not terrible, but he's not jumping into water, He's like jumping to me. I told him, yeah, no, he's not jumping to the ground. I told him I'd catch him. Like, I'm going to catch him. Anyway, so that was the whole thing. I was like, look, you got up there. This is the only way down. You got to trust me. Like, you got to jump here, and I'll just catch you. And I told him very specifically how to jump. I was like, when you jump, you need to jump out. You need to have your arms spread like this the entire time. Don't freak out halfway down and start kicking, because then you'll hit the ground. Don't do that. I need you to just free fall like a swan, my friend, just all the way down. And he did, and it was awesome. He flew, and I caught him and set him on the ground. Little did I know there was a lady behind me at the Lowe's that was taking video that she was certain she was going to be sending to the cops later. Like, she was like, I was videoing this because I just saw this going badly. And I was like, well, lady, chill out. Anyways. But we don't always jump off. I mean, that's not primarily what we do, but he wanted to climb that thing, and I love that he wanted to climb it. And I told him, I was like, bro, you just got to trust me here. You got to do that thing. And so the reason I tell that story is not only to brag on my kid, but I think it's a really good description of faith to a certain extent. It's not a perfect description, but it is a good description of faith. And faith can be really confusing for us to understand, because as Christians, especially Christians in the South, and some of you aren't Christians, you're just in the South and you're around Christians a lot and they skeeve you out. But you're around faith a lot, and it can be a little confused. Like, what does it actually look like? What does it actually say? That even that verse is so standard for us. It's the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things unseen. It's like, okay, none of those words make sense together. And so I just want to, the way that I understand it best is by looking at it backwards. Okay, so we're kind of going to look at it a little backwards, and I'm going to just use Teddy's story as part of this. So go to the next slide here. It says, so Teddy, the faith is the assurance of things hoped for, conviction of things unseen. So Teddy hoped to be caught when he jumped. It's a good hope when you're jumping from 13 feet. Teddy felt assured, to some extent, that I would catch him when he jumped. There was an assurance of, like, Dad's going to catch me if I jump. He had a conviction on something unseen. He hadn't seen me catch him yet. Still hadn't happened. He didn't know. He's never jumped from this far before. He just had a conviction. I haven't seen this actually take place, but I'm just convicted in my soul and believe with some assurance that he's going to catch me. And then he jumped out, which is faith. Okay, so that's the way it works. We practice faith all the time. You do this with your food, okay? You have hope that you will be full, okay? You're like, I just hope to be full. Then you feel assurance that when you sit down at Chick-fil-A eating nuggets, that thing that you're eating will make you full. There's assurance there. You sit it down in front of you, you're like, assurance. This is going to make me full. You have the conviction of something unseen. You're not currently full. You haven't eaten anything yet, but you have conviction of something unseen that if you put it in your mouth, all of a sudden, you're going to experience being full. And some of you have to go back from seconds, which I totally get. But that's the idea. By faith, you take the food. You haven't experienced it filling you just yet. It's an unseen thing. You take the food, which is faith, and then it ultimately goes in, and then it does fill you and that kind of thing. And so your faith is made sight at that particular point. We do this all the time. You did this in your chairs when you walked in. You felt assurance. You hoped that the chair would hold you up. You felt assurance that sitting down on it, that chair actually could hold you. Some conviction of something unseen. It's not currently holding you, but you believe that it can. And then you sit on it and you place all of your weight on it. That's faith. We do this all the time. Some of you are doing this with sins in your life right now. You have this hope that this sin is going to give you all the fulfillment and joy in your life. You feel some assurance that other people have said that it's gone really well for them, so let me try it for myself. There's something of like, I don't know if I've actually experienced feeling fulfilled by this thing, but I have more faith in that sin than I do in other things, and so I'm going to continue to press in. We do practice faith all the time, okay? It's just something that you hope for, that you feel assurance that this thing will give it to you. You have some conviction of something that's unseen, and then you just practice walking into that thing. And so that's what faith is, and it's very important for you to understand that you actually practice this all the time, not just in things when it pertains to Jesus and things like that. You practice faith in just about everything that you do. And so what I want us to talk about is practicing faith in Jesus, like how to practice putting your faith into Jesus. If you're claiming to follow him, if you think that you're following him, or if you're interested in following him at all, I want us to practice faith in Jesus. And here's what this is, just a short explanation. Practicing faith in Jesus is embracing the adventure of the unknown and choosing to live the way Jesus has instructed us to live, because we believe that this is the way, that his way is the way to true and abundant living. Practicing the way of Jesus is embracing the adventure, choosing to live the way that he's called us to live, because we believe by faith that the way that he's telling us to live is actually the way to live into fullness and abundant living. And what I want you to know is like faith is always active. I think we talk about like I have faith, like passive. I have faith that's passive, and that's not how that works. Faith is always active. Your faith is always seen by what you actually do. You sat in the chair, you had faith that it would hold you up. You ate the food, you had faith that it wouldn't kill you, that it would fill you up. Teddy jumped, it was an active thing. It was an active faith. He jumped believing and having faith that I would catch him. Faith is always active. And so when we practice faith in Jesus, it's doing the exact same thing. Living in the way and choosing to live not the way of the world, not the way that maybe even makes sense to us, but choosing to live the way he's instructed us because we believe his way is the best way in order to experience the life that he came to give us. And so I want to talk about specifically practicing faith in Jesus, okay? And I want to give you 2 reasons why, and then I want to give you a short practice at the end, something that you can begin doing. So the first reason I want us to practice faith in Jesus is that when you do this, when you practice faith in Jesus, you will experience what everyone else in the world is looking for but can't seem to find. When you choose to practice faith in Jesus, your experience in doing that will allow you to experience what other people are searching for but just can't find where they're searching for it. So for instance, people are longing for fulfillment, and they're looking to all kinds of things, to their boyfriends and their girlfriends and their porn and their sin and just all social media and all the different things, their sport, whatever. They're constantly looking for something to bring them joy and fulfillment or something. That's what people are chasing down. But Christians who are practicing faith in Jesus understand that, like what Jesus says in Matthew 5:6, he says, they believe this, that Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Who hunger and thirst for righteousness so that they will be filled. And so people who practice faith in Jesus understand that what Jesus is saying is like, look, I understand that you want to be fulfilled. I understand that you're all longing for that everyone is created with this longing to be fulfilled. Everybody, he's like, I get that you want to be fulfilled. I'm just telling you the only way that actually takes place is actually in following after me and choosing to be obedient to me, which is practicing righteousness. To actually, I've told you the way that you should go, and then living into that is ultimately the only way where you'll actually be filled. And so Christians who have faith in this, it's not just passive, I just believe that, but Christians who have active faith in this actually pursue following Jesus. And when they do that, they experience fulfillment that other people continue to search for, but never actually find. A lot of other people who don't actually practice this faith, who don't do this, will constantly be looking for fulfillment and other things. Again, their sin, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, whatever. They'll be looking for that thing. And every now and then, they'll stumble upon a really great thing that kind of gives them like a peak in fulfillment, like, ooh, that was really great. But then all of a sudden that wanes and that goes away, and they're constantly trying to find it more and more and more. And that boyfriend gets old, that girlfriend gets old, that sin gets old. I need more of that sin. All of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're constantly trying to find more and more ways to peak your fulfillment, because you know as soon as you hit that thing, it eventually wanes, and then you have to find something else. And so they're constantly looking for this thing, but never actually finding the fulfillment that they're actually looking for. And Christians who choose to go, no, I believe that following Jesus, practicing righteousness, believing what he says and doing what he says, I believe that that's the only way that we actually experience the fulfillment that we need. And so they find something that everybody else is just looking for. Jesus talks about this all the time, that the wide road leads to destruction, but a lot of people walk down that road because it's just easier. But the narrow road that leads to life, the narrow road that leads to abundance, the narrow road that leads to fulfillment, very few people even find it. And when they do find it, very few people even actually practice active faith in doing the thing. They may hear following Jesus leads to fulfillment, and they may know it theoretically, but active faith, they're not pursuing it. But those who do actually experience the fulfillment that Jesus promises to give. He says, I came to give you life in abundance. But it comes with him. It comes with following him. And so that's why he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for this, because they will be the ones who actually are filled. And so if you want to experience that fulfillment, if you want to experience those things, if you want to experience what other people are looking for, peace, joy, hope, and all these different things, it's just only found in actually believing what Jesus says, but then actually moving towards that thing, an active faith of actually doing that. Not just Teddy up on the thing, sitting there going like, I think he can catch me, but actually pressing in and doing that. And those who choose to believe it but not actually move towards it, don't experience that. I mean, if Teddy wouldn't have had faith in me, active faith, he'd still be up there today, I guess, sitting at Lowe's. This is where I live now. And some of you are sitting there going, I'm longing for fulfillment, and I'm constantly doing this, and I call myself a Christian. It's like, but have you ever actually put one step in front of the other and actually looked at the things that Jesus says, come, follow me, come to me, do these things? Have you actually had faith enough to actually move forward in those things? Because primarily in my experience, those that actually put one step in front of the other and actually begin doing that experience what other people are sitting there going like, man, I'm looking for this and I just can't seem to find it. It's a story of my life. Some of you have experienced this in other times of your life at United or Rally Weekend or something like that, where you're sitting there and you're practicing the way of Jesus just because there's nothing else to do at United other than just doing some of these things. And you're like, I'm experiencing things I've never experienced before, or things I've been longing to experience. It's like, you know why? Because you're actually doing the things where Jesus says, this is where this lives. It lives with me. I've given you the roadmap in order to experience it, and it comes with following me. And so Christians who have an active faith and practice faith in Jesus believe that Jesus has given them commands and demands on their life, so because he knows this is the way to experience that. And if you just follow me in this, trust me in this, and then follow me in this, that is what I came to give, and that's what you receive when you follow me. And those who are longing for it, who don't do that, don't actually experience those things. And so one of the reasons I want y'all to actually practice faith in Jesus, not just say like, oh yeah, I have faith in Jesus, but really your life is mostly showing that you have faith in other things. The reason I want you to do it is because you can, Jesus is not equal opportunity. His salvation is for everybody, and it's free and for everybody. But there is something about following him that's very different. If you read the Gospels and you see all these people in the Gospels, you see like this story of the woman who was suffering from a bleeding issue, and all of a sudden she like runs up to Jesus with faith, believing that if I just touch the hem of his robe, I will be healed. And then it happens, and Jesus says, be well, woman, your faith has healed you. Like, you experience something very different. Other people long for healing, but he says, I wasn't able to do miracles in those places because there's no faith there. I'm just telling you, it's not like the secret key that unlocks something, but following him ultimately leads to the things that other people are looking for and longing for and just can't seem to find. And so I want you to actually practice your faith in Jesus so that you can experience those things. Okay, second point. Second reason I want us to practice faith in Jesus is because it creates space for God's power. It just kind of like the thing we talked about 2 weeks ago of like it's the splash zone. Faith just seems to create space for God to do work in those things. So the other night we were chopping wood. Me and my son, Teddy has he has a little hatchet that he chops wood with, and he does okay. But every now and then it's like, hey, it's time for me to chop the wood. Like I need to chop the wood. And I have a big old axe and the whole thing. And so he'll do this thing where he's chopping it, and then he'll be like, all right, everybody back up. Everybody back up. And then I come in, and they do need to back up because I'm swinging a big axe, and I don't want it, like the wood chips will, hit the whole thing. But the whole point of like back up is to give me space to actually chop this wood so that I can swing as hard as I can and do the thing, and I'm not going to hurt anybody. And so in a very similar way, faith just creates this space where God can actually move in and go, okay, I want to do work, but I'm not going to force myself. But if you believe that I can, then the work that I want to do, I can do that through you. And so just if you're like, I don't know about all that, I don't know if that makes any sense, I just want to give you a ton of examples. I don't know how many it is, like 10 or something. But I want to give you a bunch of examples where you actually see this play out, that God is constantly looking for people who believe in him, because when they have faith in him, it just creates an opportunity and space for him to actually do powerful, powerful work. And so, for instance, next slide. Noah was warned about rain. Noah had never seen rain. He didn't know what the word rain meant. Okay, warned about, hey, there's going to be rain for 40 days. It's like, I don't understand half of what you just said. Warned about rain, never seen rain before, but in faith to God's words, he built an ark and it saved his family. God wanted to start a nation that would bless the world, and he needed a man that had faith enough to believe and follow. Abraham had faith that God could do that through him and give him a family even though he was 100 years old, and he did that. Looking around the world, Psalm 53 says that God searches, is looking through the world to see anybody who is wise, anybody who seeks him. Found Abraham. Moses believed that God could rescue all of Israel out of slavery, and so he did. God told Israel to walk around the walls of Jericho 7 times, and the walls would fall down. Sounds like a crazy battle plan, but they did the thing in faith. The army believed, and they marched around the walls, and the walls fell, and they captured the city. God could have worked through anyone to defeat Goliath. Truly, he could have worked. There's a ton of people that know how to sling a stone. And yet he chose. Why didn't he work through anybody else? And the reason is because there was only one person there that believed it was possible. He was the only, not even in the army. David just happened to be the only guy there that believed, I think God can kill this 9'9" giant. And everybody else was like, nah, man, I don't think so. I mean, that's 9'9". I mean, it's a big bro. Like, I don't think it can happen. And David's like, I'm just telling you he can. And then he does. One person created the space in his life and in his heart for God to do what he wanted to do anyways. Mary believed that God would give her a child even though she was a virgin. The disciples believed that as they testified about Jesus in the New Testament, that God would save people and turn them to him. And so the gospel advanced among the nations, and thousands of people became followers of Jesus, and so on and so forth until today, where many of you are followers of Jesus. My point is that God is just looking for people. The reason I want us to practice faith is because God is looking for people who just believe with childlike faith that he can and will and still do the things that he longs to do, that he still does move in power. There's a lot of times in the Old Testament where God moves in power, and he primarily moves through younger people, because it just seems to be that younger people have more faith. Younger people, they just believe that more is available, even if it's like naive faith. Like, I don't like a couple people being thrown in the fire, like, God can save us out of this burning furnace. It's like, you guys are crazy. And yet, they have this space where it's like, I believe that he can, and then he did. He didn't have to. But he created the space where they created the space where that was actually possible. And my point is, again, is that he's just looking for people who are actually creating space for him to move into the world. And anytime you see God's kingdom move forward in a person or into a space, it always preceded somebody who had faith there. Anytime you read the Bible, there was always faith there that ultimately allowed God to go, okay, now you believe I can. I'm never going to force my way. I'm not going to force you to experience all of these things. But now I'm going to move into this particular space. God is constantly looking for those people. He's looking for redemptive risk takers, like people who just are willing to follow even when it doesn't make sense. Even people who are like, I'm willing to trust you even when the whole culture might throw stones at me, or people may call me crazy. Or like, he's looking for people like, my way of doing things isn't the way that the world understands, but those who believe that my way is still the right way even when it doesn't make sense. I'm looking for people who believe those things. And so that's one of the reasons, because it just opens a space for God to actually express his power. And so those two things. If you are close to being a follower of Jesus or something, or you're choosing to do that, and to practice faith in him helps you, and it leads you to experience the things that other people are we're all longing for the same stuff. Followers of Jesus experience those things. Even in the midst of the suffering and the trials, it's not that we're like secluded from those and that God doesn't make those happen to us. It's not that. But even in the midst of those, we're looking for hope. We're looking for peace. We're looking for joy in the midst of sorrow. Christians who follow and practice faith in Jesus experience those things, which is why Paul would say we don't like go away or like despair in our sufferings. We glory in our sufferings because we understand that what's being produced in us is something that's making us actually more mature and more complete and all of those things. Paul talks about that. James talks about that. I mean, there's just so many things that the world longs to experience that Christians do experience when they practice faith in him. So, how do we practice faith? How do we do this? First is we need to understand a couple of things. You need to understand what it looks like. God will call you to deeper obedience than what others are called to. And it's just important for you to understand, like, what does it look like to actually follow in faith? Sometimes you're looking around other Christians and maybe comparing yourself, which is a bad idea anyways, and you're like, here's what they do, and they call themselves Christians. Certainly, this is okay for me too. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Again, it's not equal opportunity. He will call you to deeper obedience than what other people are called to at times. And the truth is, he's probably called them to, and they've just said, like, nah, this is as far as I can go. He will call you to that. He will call you to do things that seem risky or scary. He called Abraham to leave your homeland and go to this other homeland. And it's like, I don't even know where that is. And it's like, right. It's a little risky. It's definitely scary. Take your family with you. Go to this space that you don't know. But I'll be with you and I'll protect you. And Abraham goes and follows. He calls Abraham to kill his one and only son, the son that was promised to him. And he's like, go and sacrifice him on the altar to me. And he's like, this is so confusing. And this seems so risky. If you're going to bring the promise through this kid that I'm going to kill him, I don't know how this actually works. But in obedience, he moves forward. Now, he ultimately doesn't end up doing that. But his heart was, I will be obedient to you regardless. He will call you in the same way to do risky and scary things. He called me to move to Tennessee from Georgia to a place where I didn't know anybody. I'm very thankful I came here. He will call you to trust him over what you can see and what other people think is reasonable. And that's huge because you'll have really, really reasonable Christians that will try and tell you, like, yeah, I love faith, love Jesus. It's just not reasonable what you're doing. Like following him that fervently, it's just unreasonable. It's like, man, find me a reasonable Christian or a reasonable God follower in the Bible. They're just not super reasonable. They're crazy. I mean, the way that Hebrews 11 is like they're foreigners and aliens here. Like you don't even fit in. Like the world's not worthy of you because the world doesn't understand you. I love the line of that author that says, beware the soul-sucking force of reasonableness. I'm like, that's so real. Who wants reasonable? Risky's more fun. Unless you're a 6 on the Enneagram, then it's terrifying. Those things, that's what it'll look like if he's calling you to those, if he's doing that. Some of it will look like that. The second thing that I want you, that's just understanding what it looks like. The practice that I want to give you is to do a faith experiment, to experiment with faith, okay? And I want you to really, again, I feel like in this, what we think of faith is like this ethereal thing. It's like, I have faith. And it's like, no. I want you to practice faith. I want you to make it active. It's always supposed to be active. It's always supposed to do that. Same way love is supposed to be an active love. It's not a feeling. It's an action. Faith is an action, not a feeling. So I want you to do a faith experiment. If you're like, I'm a person of faith, great. You can still do this. If you're like, I don't even know, it's like, great. It's an experiment, bro. Just try it. But here's the faith experiment. Basically, just pick a way that Jesus calls you to live and just do it for like a week, okay? Like do it for a month. Like, whatever. Like you guys try different things and like, I'm going to try keto for a month. Like, okay. Try different things and stuff like that. I'm going to try and working out. And then it's like, it went for like 2 days. And it's like, working out is hard. You know how bad, you know how heavy the stuff is in there? Like, that was a pretty good workout joke. Okay. But faith experiment. I want you to try this for a week or for a month. I would encourage you to do it for a month, but just pick one. And so, for instance, I'm going to give you a couple. Deliverance. If you're like, I just want some freedom from sin. This is what Jesus says. He says, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. This was Jesus' response to, look, if you're walking through a temptation you can't seem to escape, do whatever it takes. Not literally cut off your hand, not literally pluck out your eye, but do whatever it takes. Yeah, just to be sure. Do whatever it takes to remove that thing from your life so that it's no longer a temptation for you. This is what he says. And so some of you, if you would just practice, if you're like, I'm just going to put this, every time I have my phone in the bedroom, every time I'm with my girlfriend or boyfriend in this particular space, every time I'm with that person anyways, like I'm tempted to sin, this thing continues to cause me to sin. If we practiced faith in this, we would be constantly looking at things that lead us to temptation and removing those things from our lives. And some people would be like, well, you're too weak. Like, you're just too weak. Like, you don't need to remove those things. You just need to have more self-control. This is very much self-control. Choosing to go like, I'm going without my iPhone for a time because it's too much temptation for me. I'm giving my parents all access to every screen I own because I'm cutting off every possible chance of me stumbling upon something, giving into temptation. If we actually practice faith in Jesus, we'd experience some of these things. And some of y'all have been stuck in something for a really, really, really long time. And Jesus is like, just practice faith in me. I told you how it goes down. I told you that this is a way of getting out of some of those things. Practice this. Believe me that what I'm telling you is true, then it will lead you to life. Because it feels like, man, if I give away my phone, then I'm not going to be able to do this and all this stuff. And then we talk our way back into it. Then it's like, well, I'll just keep it. I'll just hold on to it. And it's like, but you're currently struggling and entering into a space of death. And he's going, the way to life is to cut those things off and do whatever it takes to get them out of your life. You can call it weakness all you want, but in our weakness, he is strong. He's going to show himself favorable in that particular way. And so if you want those things, this is what it requires. My wife has every password in my home because I'm too weak. She has every app. I don't have apps on my phone for any of those things because I'm too weak. I just can't. Temptation comes. The enemy is strong, and I'm just going to cut it off. I'm going to shut it down. So if you want deliverance, I'm just telling you, It might mean that you actually have to break up with that guy. It might mean you have to break up with that girl. It may mean you have to leave those friends. It may mean that you have to do some things that sever something, and it might hurt. But Jesus is like, this leads us to life. Freedom from worry. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything you're worried about will be added to you. This is his response to worry. If you're constantly worrying, his response is, don't worry, seek first the kingdom of God, and everything you're worried about will be added to you. Just trust in the midst of your worry, when you're worried, just pursue me in that. Give those things to me. Talk to me about those things, and just trust that as you seek to follow me, I'll take care of all of your needs and all of those things that you actually deal with. And so again, if we practice, instead of worrying our way, because if you worry, like, you'll actually do some good stuff for yourself, because worry helps a little bit. You're like constantly thinking one step ahead and stuff like that. But it's so weighty, it's wearing you down, and you're constantly living under stress, which stress isn't good for you. And Jesus is like, look, I'm just telling you, if you'll stop worrying about that, seek me, giving those things to me, I promise, I love you enough, I'm powerful enough to supply what you're actually worried about getting. I will make sure you have what you need. Better friendships, man, some of you guys need some better friendships. This is what Jesus says. If you're offering your gift on the altar, so think of gift like you're worshiping in here, you're praying in here, doing something like that. And you remember that your brother or sister, your friend has something against you, leave your gift, stop worshiping, get up, and go be reconciled with them, and then come offer your gift. Some of y'all have been offering some really ugly gifts to Jesus. Like, just your friends are just angry with you, and you're irreconciled, and there's wrong, there's pain, and all this stuff, but you're worshiping and praying, and you're doing all this stuff in here, and Jesus is like, but if you practice what I actually say is real, and what I actually say is true, you would understand that, like, when that happens, we're not right together because you're not right here. You can't just continue to worship me and do all of this stuff and give your gift to you can't do that while you're actually at odds with your brother or sister, with your friends. And so if you wanted better friendship, but seeking to reconcile those things, understanding they have something against me and I'm going to do everything in my power to reconcile, we would experience better friendships. Forgiving others. Jesus says this, if we believe this, but if you forgive others their sins, your Father will forgive your sins. If we had faith in that, we'd be very quick to forgive, even with difficult things, and I know that y'all have dealt with difficult things. But Jesus' words aren't always super easy. Forgiving people is very, very challenging, but the point is, like, forgive as you've been forgiven, and if you do not forgive the other side of this, if you're choosing not to forgive someone, what does it mean about how your Father will forgive your sins? But you should forgive. If you do not forgive your sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. So practicing that. Victory over sin and shame. Therefore, confess your sins one to another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. Confessing your sin to someone else that you can trust ultimately leads to healing. This is effective. What does he say? He says, the effective prayer of a righteous person can accomplish much. And so the idea is like, man, you want to be set free from some of that stuff. Confess your sin. Don't hide it, but confess it. Anxiety. Do not be anxious about anything. Just pick one of these. But in everything, by prayer and petition, make your request known to God, and then the peace of God will, what does it say? The peace of God will guard your hearts in Christ Jesus. All of these different things, instead of worrying, doing that. And then finally, turning from sin. Just turning from, Jesus says it's like, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And what he's talking about is like, anybody that's still holding on to their sin, and this is, I mean, many of us still struggle with this. Like, in one hand, I have my sin, and I'm like, man, I really have faith that this is going to supply what I need. And this other hand, we have Jesus, and it's like, I really trust that he's going to do something for me. It's mostly about my eternal destiny. I believe that he's going to carry me to heaven one day, but I believe that my sin is going to supply me what I need today. And so we try and hold on to both of these things, and it's like, you're trying to save your life. You're trying to save these things. You're trying to make your life great by holding on to these things, and it just doesn't work that way. And what Jesus is saying, like, throw that stuff out. Like, walk away from that. Give both of these hands to me. Like, just put that down. It's not going to get you where you need to go. Lose those things because you trust so much so that, like, I'm going to just lose these things and have faith in him. Stop putting my faith in my sin, but put my faith in Jesus to actually supply me what I thought this thing would. And so if you think that your sin, like with your, whatever your sin is, that you're like, man, I know I can't tell anybody about this, but this is it. If you think that it's going to supply you something, you're like, if I give that up, I will lose something. Jesus is saying, yeah, it might feel like you're going to lose your life, but actually if you lose that, you'll actually find life on the other end of that. But if you hold on to it, all you're holding on to is something that's just pouring more and more destruction and death into your life. And so people who practice faith in Jesus are constantly looking for the things in their life, like, where am I holding on to sin, and where can I let that go in order to actually come to him and actually trust him with those things? Where am I looking for sin to be something that fulfills me, that I could ultimately give that to him? And so I just want you to pick one. Again, just try it for a week. Like, just find something where Jesus says, go and live this way, and just try it. You will do it imperfectly, and that's okay. The idea is that, like, you doing it and being perfect at it isn't anything that's necessary. Jesus doesn't love you because you're trying it. He loves you, and that's why he told you to go and do it. Because he loves you, he told you, do this thing. This will lead you to life. Because he loves you, he told you, don't do this because that will lead you to death. In the same way that I told Teddy, hey, jump to me, I will catch you. Otherwise, you're going to have to stay up there. I love you. I'm going to catch you. Just do this thing. In the same way, it's not like, if you do this, then he'll love you. It's not that. I love you. I'm telling you what to do so that you'll actually experience more and more life. I'm trying to guide you there. I'm trying to help you experience that. And so again, practice. Just do an experiment. And just whatever that is, whatever sin that you're like, I'm looking for this sin in my life to do something for me. Replace that with something of following Jesus. Even if it's just denying it and saying, I'm not going to do that. Again, some of you have experienced this in real time. I've had conversations with some of you that are like, man, when I was at United for a week, I didn't look at porn the entire week, and I felt so free, and I felt so light, and I felt so guiltless, and so much, all of the shame that I normally felt, I felt so much better. And you're like, but I know when I get back, I'm going to go right back to it, and I'm going to experience those exact same destructive feelings. And it's like, man, there's freedom in that. But it may require you actually taking a hammer to your computer, ask your parents first, but doing something to actually remove that from your life so that you can actually experience freedom over those things. Yes, sometimes, man, Jesus just changes your heart on certain things. And other times he says, hey, have faith enough to follow me, to deny those things, and to cut those things out of your life, because both those things are true. I can deliver, and I'm also asking for obedience in this. Have faith enough to believe that what I'm asking you to do is actually what's best for you. And we know that because he went to the cross to show us, look, I'm asking you to do these things, that this is best for you. And I'm going to the cross to show you that I'm not just saying that, like, hey, go do this, and I love you, and you're like, yeah, sure. But then, like, he died for you to show, like, this is the extent of his love. So much so, it's like, I want you to really understand, I only want life for you, so much so that I'm willing to die so that you can have life. You were supposed to die, but I'll take that death so that you can actually experience life. I want life for you so badly that I'm willing to die to give it to you. And so for you to hear his words and to not put your faith in them, it keeps you from experiencing those things. Last story, and then we'll close. Hannah and Caroline, y'all can come on up. I've told this story before, but when Teddy was 3 years old, or maybe 4, we went to the the City Museum in St. Louis. It's like basically like a gigantic, playground in a gigantic building. And he was 4 and can fit through all the crevices of the whole thing. And anyway, so we're in the thing, and if y'all have ever been there, like, it's just one big giant slide, basically, like through the ceilings and all the rest of it. And so we get there, and Teddy's playing in the thing a little bit, and he's so excited. He's so excited of all the different stuff, and it was really exciting for me. And then he goes up into this like play area and gets scared. I actually have a picture of it right here. He gets really scared, and that's him when he's 4. He's so cute. But what you can't see is, like, to his left are just glorious riches of slides and ball pits and everything that he would love, okay? To his left. To his right is the exact same thing. Like, it's just nothing. Like, he picked the one space of, like, a jail cage. Like, and he'd just hold up there, and he's like, this is where I live now. And he's upset. He hates it. He does not like to be there. It's small. He can't even stand up, and he's only 3 feet tall. Like, he's really upset by this thing. And I'm looking at him in this. If you hold on, it's a live photo. You can hear him say, "Come get me." and I'm talking to him. I'm standing. I'm like, bro, if you go this way, there are glories beyond compare. Things that will make you so excited you couldn't even imagine. Or if you go that way, there are glorious things beyond compare that you don't even understand. I was like, but if you stay here, it's not going to be good. Like, this is all that's here. And I was like, dude, you're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to. And again, look. I mean, just as faith goes, I don't love him more if he goes left or right. He's my son here and now. I want him to go left or right so that he'll actually experience the joy that he came to this freaking place to enjoy. I want him to enjoy the thing. And Jesus is the exact same way. He's like, look, I just told you how to live. I told you this is the way, and I'm not even going to just tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you and then ask you, please follow me, and I'll be with you always. Then I'll forgive you when you screw it up. You're not more my son or my daughter when you're doing it. I love you either way. I'm just showing you that if you go left or you go right, you'll experience far more. You'll actually experience what you're longing for. But if you choose to stay here, grabbing the tight ropes or whatever the bars of his own space, and if you choose to just stay like, no, I'm going to hold on to this sin, then you're choosing to stay here. And some of you just need to make the decision again. Some of you have made a decision for Jesus to take you to heaven with your eternity. You just can't trust him like today. You can't like give him your joy. You can't give him your fulfillment. You still think that porn is the way. You still think that your immoral relationship with your girlfriend or boyfriend, like this is the way to do it. You still think that your phone or your social media, like this is the way to true happiness. Like, dude, I'm telling you, you can stay there as long as you want, but I'm just telling you, if you'll just give it to him, if you'll actually follow him in that, there's just more available to you. And so some of you need to make the decision for the first time. You actually need to place your faith in Jesus. Like, man, I have more faith in my sin than I do in Jesus, and I need to drop this, walk away from this, and actually turn to him so that I can actually experience the life that he came to give me. I promise you, I'm not overselling his love. I'm not overselling the abundance that he offers. And I'm also not saying that you'll never walk through suffering. You'll also deal with those things. But when we practice following this man who can conquer death, you will experience life, because death can't hold him, and it has no say in your life either. And so my encouragement to you is to consider, how do you need to begin practicing your actual faith in him? Let me pray and then we'll sing. Father, I pray that you would bring freedom. Just students, people who are just holding on to sin and choosing not to practice their faith in you, God, I pray that you would allow them to see that you're actually calling them. You love them, and so you're calling them into further life. I pray that you would help them to experience that today. In Jesus' name, amen.